am so excited because today we are going to talk about how to answer the tell me about yourself question. Honestly, I've been shying away from this even though I really should be teaching this because I disagree with the approach of so many people. I will say 90% of the people who teach you how to answer tell me about yourself. I disagree with their format and their approach. Now, why is tell me about yourself an important question, even though a lot of people dread answering this question, think it's generic, think it's boring, especially if you are an executive? This is a very important question to master. Why? Because tell me about yourself is pretty much your origin story. And you want to share your origin story in order to A, build that rapport with hiring managers, B, ensure that your approach and your leadership philosophy aligns with the organization that you're entering into. Because the last thing that you need is you enter into an organization that clashes with your values and the way you think. And then you have a miserable time because you are in a terrible culture and people that you report into that don't align with your ideas. And this is why people become miserable. The biggest mistake that people make during the interview process is they focus so much on proving themselves and not enough time in terms of assessing if there is that alignment between you and the organization. Look, if you're in a position where you need the finances and you need to just accept the offer, I get it. But at the same time, when we go into this process with that desperation and that thinking, that's what creates that job hopping. And that's where the longevity isn't there. So if you are currently employed and you are really thinking seriously about your career and treating your career not like a one-off, but actually a career. When people navigate their job search, they're just thinking about their next job. They're not thinking about the consequences to their entire career. And that's where complexity happens. The setback happens, where you land a job that pretty much creates a setback for the rest of your career trajectory. We want to avoid that as much as possible. Listen, when it comes to executive career transitions, we're not thinking about 1 or 2 years. We're thinking about the 10 remaining years of your career or the 15 remaining years of your career. And we want to approach the search in a strategic manner versus just job hopping. Okay, so let's talk about how to answer tell me about yourself. I am going to share with you an example of a client's answer because it is phenomenal and mind-blowing. The thing is, this executive client was in hospitality for more than 20 years, and he wanted to pivot into a different industry because he was burnt out from hospitality. He didn't just want to travel, and it felt like he was, pigeonholing himself into that industry. And, when we get older, it's not about fitting our life into our career. It should be the other way around. You should build a career that supports your life. So let's talk about this. I'm going to read for you my client's story. And then if you are watching, I would love it if you tell me in the chat. First of all, do you love answering the question, tell me about yourself? What is the most frustrating thing about it for you? And when I read for you that story, I want you to tell me what are some of the aspects that really resonate for you and get you excited? And what are some things that you can borrow, that you can implement in your own answers? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read his answer. I started my hospitality career in a windowless back office, manually processing loyalty point requests by hand long before automation. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave me an early appreciation for brand standards, operational discipline, and the invisible systems that protect guest trust. Growing up as an Air Force brat, I moved frequently and experienced different places and cultures from a young age. My father's military career instilled structure, accountability, and discipline in our household. Early in my career, I was promoted quickly into front desk and supervisory roles without much preparation. I struggled at first, learning how to lead people and make decisions under pressure in real time. That experience became pivotal. I saw what happens when teams aren't properly supported, and I made a commitment that if I advanced, I would build stronger foundations for others. That became my North Star, developing people intentionally, creating accountability, and building teams that win consistently. Over time, I progressed into general manager roles. And as a general manager of a 155 suite Gulf Coast resort, I led a 60-person team through a full shutdown during the pandemic with no playbook, guiding ownership through financial scenario planning, stabilizing team communication, and building a phased restart strategy. When we reopened, we didn't just recover, we ultimately ranked number one out of 80 hotels in our portfolio for overall guest experience. Today, I'm focused on leadership development, operational excellence, and commercial performance, building strong benches, aligning teams around clear goals, and creating cultures where accountability and care coexist. What started as a back office internship turned into a purpose driven career, leading teams, improving performance, and developing future leaders. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you and see how I can help. What a phenomenal story. Who can tell me here what they loved about the story? Please, if you're watching, participate. I love it when you do because it just makes this fun for me and I get energized and I will be more motivated to teach you all the amazing tips. So let me know in the chat, what did you like about his story? Okay, so let's talk about the structure of his story. What you may have noticed in his story is that he's showing versus telling who he is as a leader. Rather than telling you, I'm a great leader, I believe in this, I believe in that, I did this and I did that, he is showing you his values as a leader through the story. So when he talks about how he led a team through a full shutdown during the pandemic, that shows you his resiliency as a leader. When he talks about how he led a 60-person team, you can actually visualize that, right? And he's being very specific. He's not giving you a watered down story. He's actually being specific. He's telling you that this is a 155 suite resort, that he led a 60-person team through a full shutdown. And at the end of the day, like, it didn't even matter what he did. He's giving us the before and after snapshot. And this is my little magic trick when it comes to telling stories, especially when it's something like tell me about yourself, which is actually different than tell me about your experience. Tell me about your experience is more about prove to us that you're credible. Prove to us that you're a fit for the role. This is where you can talk about how your skills and your experiences map to the role that they're hiring. Tell me about yourself is more about tell us who you are as a person. What are the values that you stand for, right? So when you're picking your pivotal moment, so he picked a pivotal moment in his career. And when you answer this question, I always encourage you, instead of regurgitating the resume and talking about your chronology, pick a pivotal moment. His pivotal moment was when he was a general manager at a hotel during the pandemic. And he was able to basically guide the team through a full shutdown without having some kind of playbook, without having some kind of operating procedure. He was able to do that, right? So that's one thing that he did very well. The second thing that he did very well is he shared with us his philosophy when it comes to leadership. And some executives are a little bit worried about sharing their contrarian ideas or philosophy. But the thing is, when you hold back and you don't share your contrarian ideas, you're walking into an organization that might not be aligned with your way of operating. And that is a dangerous place to be in, because you don't want to find out after they hire you that leadership doesn't agree with your ideas, your values as a leader, and your way of thinking. So his philosophy that you might have seen is to actually develop people intentionally. So him walking into the organization, he's making it clear to the people that he's interviewing with that he wants to ensure that there is some kind of development plan for people to get promoted, for people to grow, and for people to perform, to create accountability, and to make sure that when we're building those teams, they can win consistently. So think about your pivotal story in your career that demonstrates your leadership values. I have another client who shared that he literally built an entire technology function from scratch during a merger and acquisition. And I asked him, what is your philosophy as a leader? And he said that at the end of the day, it's not a technology that helps an organization perform well and become profitable. It's actually the technology combined with the people and process. Now, the interesting thing about this client is he shared with me, well, I'm worried about sharing that because it might ruffle the wrong feathers, and the technology folks might get offended because they're going to feel like, you know, I'm not basically hyping the technology enough. And the thing is, you should not feel that way, because you should be sharing your contrarian values and opinions, right? If you can't voice your contrarian perspective, then how are you going to differentiate yourself as a leader? You're there to advise organizations. You're not there to be submissive and to be a follower. Organizations count on you to guide their direction. So when you are sharing your tell me about yourself answer, it is meant to challenge industry myths. Another industry myth that's out there is the whole AI thing and how AI can accelerate delivery. But here's the thing. If you're just accelerating, delivery using AI, then you're just creating slop, right? You're just creating you're not really creating value, because just because we're releasing more features into the market, we're releasing more products, doesn't mean that those products are quality products or aligned with customer needs. So if your philosophy is contrarian as a leader, you should not be afraid to share it. And the tell me about yourself answer is a perfect vehicle to test whether there is that cultural alignment between you and the organization. The other thing that I really liked about his story is how he shared that he was growing up as an Air Force brat. That made me chuckle because it brought in a little bit of personality. It gave me this personal share about him that helped me actually like him. And if your hiring manager has something in common with you that's personal, whether you're both moms or you're both dads or you both have a military background, and even if you don't have that connection, that's something that they could know about you that could be so valuable, and for them to get to know you as a person. And I love how he tied how his military upbringing instilled structure and accountability. And that's basically one of his superpowers as a leader, is to actually create systems for teams. And so the wonderful thing about the story is he was showing versus telling, and he gave me some basically pieces of his life that were relevant to the message that he wanted to share with hiring manager about who he is as a person, not just who he is as a professional. Okay? So I hope that this is helpful. I wanted to jump in and just kind of give you guys a different perspective and a way of sharing, of putting together the tell me about yourself answer. The tell me about yourself answer should not be re articulating your resume. It should not be trying to prove yourself too hard and talk about all the hard numbers and the wins in your career and the dollar amounts that you brought to the table. It really should be focused on one story that you want to share that pretty much shows versus tells them about who you are, and it should revolve around your leadership philosophy. I will share with you guys my origin story and my tell me about yourself answer. So if you go on my website, natabohendi.com, and click on the about section, I'm actually going to do a quick screen share here. Let's see. There we go. So if you go on my website and click on about, you'll notice that I don't share my bio. I'm so much against bios. Bios have their place, right? But what's more powerful than a bio, if you're trying to build that relationship with someone, whether it's at a networking event or a coffee chat, it's better to tell them your story than share your bio, because that's what makes it personal and that's what brings in the bond. So as you can see here, I talk about how I quit over text in November 2018. And at the time, I was 35 years old, a female immigrant with a six-figure salary in tech, leadership position at a top consulting company with a great boss, and on my way to an executive position. So I gave you just enough of who I am and my backstory without going into too much detail. And the pivotal story that I'm sharing is how I quit over text. Then after I talk about how I quit over text, I share with you the problem that I was trying to solve, which a lot of you might be trying to solve, which is how I could not figure out what my career sweet spot is, because I was a jack of all trades. I've been so many things in the tech world: product manager, agile coach, business analyst, consultant, UX, scrum master. But where was my sweet spot? What was my zone of genius? And then January 3rd, 2020 happens, where I was out of work, woke up with a fever. My boyfriend at the time left me. We had a dramatic fight. He packed in a hurry, moved out, and I had a call with my career coach. And I basically said to her, all of these exercises that we did, I still don't know what I want to do. And I really need a job yesterday, and I don't love any of the jobs that we were talking about. So she got me to do this visualization exercise, and I could not think of anything. All I could see was being on the beach, dancing salsa bachata in Miami, because that was what I was into. And that's just simply how burnt out I was, that I couldn't think straight. So then the next day, I was looking outside the window from a coffee shop, and this is where the light bulb goes off for me. And I realized, you know what? I love coaching and I want to continue to be a coach, but I just don't want to be a coach within an organization. I want to be an external coach, because then I'll be able to focus on individuals and their success versus being tied to the organization's objectives. So this is where I decided that career coaching is for me. And mainly the reason why I wanted to be a career coach is because I personally felt helpless in my career. And I felt like the companies I worked for determined my fate. And I wanted my clients to drive their career versus let organizations determine it for them. And this is why I enrolled in a year-long career coaching certification in 2020. And my first client ended up being an immigrant from Nigeria, where recruiters were lowballing him with $75,000 offers, even though he was a head of IT in Nigeria. And after I helped him, he actually landed a $200,000 offer, right? And today I leverage my 15 years in tech to help professionals build fulfilling six figures. I call the process Unleashing Your Awesome because it is more than a career search. It's figuring out your sweet spot, your zone of genius, and maximizing your pay. So, do you see how I'm sharing this as a story, versus giving you my bio? It's a lot more powerful. You get to know me as a person. You learn that I was an immigrant. You learn that I wore so many hats and I was a jack of all trades. Now, granted, this story, the way I shared it, is a bit long, and I have a condensed version that I share during coffee chats. But that's what I want you to think about when you're crafting the tell me about yourself answer. This is more about who you are as a person, your leadership philosophy, and think of a pivotal story in your career that you can use as the focus of your answer. I hope that you found this helpful. If you have, I would appreciate liking this post because it is going to ensure that the algorithm pushes it out to more people who can benefit from this. Obviously, I don't expect someone listening to this to figure out how to put their tell me about yourself question together for several reasons. One, my clients, when we craft this answer, it's after we do a lot of foundational work. One of them is figuring out their career direction, because if you craft a tell me about yourself answer that doesn't align with your career direction, then that's not going to work. I didn't create my tell me about yourself answer and origin story without knowing that career coaching is something that I wanted to do, right? My client, who's a general manager, didn't craft the tell me about yourself answer without knowing that he was pivoting into property management. We had to do that work first to ensure that the tell me about yourself is aligned to his direction. And oftentimes I get my clients to do some exercises as part of that, figuring out. One of them is a journaling exercise where we journal moments from birth to present. And when my clients share that with me, I help them pick the right story that they can tell. So there's that. And then there's multiple components in your career transition, because it's not just your tell me about yourself that is going to help you land the role. You can dial that in. You can pick the best story and impress, someone during a networking conversation. But that on its own is not going to help you land the role. It's an entire end-to-end system to help you get there, starting with figuring out your career direction. What is the role that makes sense for you? 2, rebranding yourself, coming up with a cohesive story, right, across your resume, across your LinkedIn, in order to help someone understand what is the value you bring to the table. Having a job search strategy. And by the way, if you are a senior individual contributor with more than 15 years of experience, or a director or a VP, you should not be like conducting your job search like someone who's entry level or mid level. It's a completely different ball game. It is relationship based. And because it is relationship based, you need to be better at telling your story. You need to be better at articulating your approach, your frameworks. You need to position yourself as a thought leader, not a job seeker. You're a leader. You're a leader. You're going to be shaping the company's direction. You should not be like pigeonholing yourself to job postings or worrying too much about titles that you fit into or boxes you can fit into. I have clients who navigate interviews and a position is actually that didn't exist is created for them. And all of this stuff about, oh my God, I don't have a network. If you don't have a network, or if your network is not strong enough, then you should think about how you can expand your network. Otherwise, you're going to stay in the same conundrum. which is stagnant in a role that you don't enjoy, or taking jobs just because those are the options you have. And part of expanding your network is learning how to build relationships. Learning how to build relationships with a cold audience, with an audience that doesn't trust you yet and doesn't know you, really is dependent on you being great at telling your story. Truly. Think about the most successful people out there. Not just, leaders, but also entrepreneurs. Because the thing is, when you are at the director level and above, you really need to be taking an entrepreneurial approach, not a job seeker approach. Think of yourself as a business, because that type of mindset is going to, put you in a path where you're proactive and put you in a path where you are treating your job search almost like how a business generates leads. Okay? When you generate leads, you need to be comfortable having conversations with strangers. And again, how you do that is by crafting a strong narrative that's not long-winded, that is concise, that's to the point, and that is centered around your story and your ability to bring in your experiences and share them in a very engaging way, so that someone who doesn't have context into what you're doing gets it right away. But there's got to be the balance of credibility, of personality to make you approachable. Because if it's just credibility, then you become intimidating. And if it's just personality, then people are not going to take you seriously. So you got to marry the two in order for you to build those relationships and create more options, so that you don't feel like you have to take any job, right? Okay, hopefully this has been helpful. Let me know in the chat. Give me a like if you found this helpful. If you're listening, this gives me feedback so I know who's been watching and who finds this valuable. If you would like to have a conversation with me, if you're looking for someone who is going to create a system for you to land that role that you love, break it down into steps so that it's not overwhelming. Someone to talk to versus just talking to Chat GPT, right? Because with any type of transformation, it's a lot easier having a guide who's a human being, a mentor who walks you through this. And hey, I have the most amazing community of executives that I work with. If you're the kind of person who loves to be around people and to collaborate, then you would absolutely love my community. Of course, we need to be aligned, because I don't let just anyone enter my community. I'm very protective of my community because I absolutely love my clients. We have a good time during our sessions. So this is why we need to have a conversation first to see if we are a fit working together. So how do you book the call? I will show you right now how to do it. It's very simple. Go to my LinkedIn profile. You are going to see a book, an appointment button. So I'm going to share my screen now and I'm going to show you. Let me just remove this and share my screen, share my LinkedIn. There we go. So this is my LinkedIn. And you can see here, there is a book an appointment button right under my heading. Click on that. It's going to take you to the page. You can scroll down, click on the book your career diagnosis button. There's a 2-minute intake that you can fill out. It's very quick, helps me understand your goals and what is blocking you. That way, when we spend that 15 minutes, we're spending it thoughtfully and I have your background. Okay, so that's how you can book the call with me. It's going to take you to my calendar and that's how you can book the call. Okay. If you have any questions, obviously send me a DM. And if there are any topics that you would like me to talk about, feel free to put that in the comments. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you so much.